No, I feel like that one's the best.
Recording in progress.
Probably that was good. That wasn't happening. So
Yeah,
nobody saw the meeting. Since what's to order?
call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the select board meeting for June 4th, 2024. And I'll ask everybody to rise for the pledge of allegiance. Greg, if you could lead us in.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the time of the meeting that if anyone has any comments they want to make on anything that's not on the agenda, now would be the time to bring it up.
I just want to make mention that we lost a very good senator in Bennington County this week. Peter Stick was probably one of the most, in history in Vermont, to be one of the most bipartisan senators we've had. Sad that David Dick is part of this.
I agree, Steve. I thank you for bringing that up. And Dick Sears, as you said, worked well with both sides of the aisle. Any legislation that took place in Montpelier that had something to do with the criminal justice system had his fingerprints all over it. Anybody that knows his personal history understands why. And I'm sure he'll be missed in the legislature. He's done a wonderful job for, I believe, somewhere around 30 years in the Senate.
Ivan, Victoria has her hand up on Zoom.
Victoria.
Was that Steve Nichols who just spoke? Because I couldn't. hear.
Yes, it was, and I'm sorry I did not ask him to go to the,
You don't have
Yeah,
Yep.
it was a shame because I'll have to replay the video recording in order to hear what he said.
yeah.
But that's
we'll,
not why I raised my hand. I'm wondering what the SOPs are for virtual attendees and how they get recorded for the minutes. Some of us have our last names, some of us have first names. I'm not sure what it is, and I want to make sure that I'm following protocol and etiquette.
Well, we certainly know who you are because it has both your first and your last name. Quite
right.
often we'll have somebody attending, as we did at our last meeting, using somebody else's Zoom account. So it's a little hard to track. Do we have any kind of
We have a message on the waiting room to identify yourself. please.
okay. So that would be the SOP, would be to in some way identify yourself. And if you're going to speak, of course, it's best if you identify yourself.
So the people that attend virtually don't get recorded into the minutes? Because I know if I attend in person, I have to sign in both my first and last name.
So the legislature just passed a new addendum to the open meeting law. So starting July 1st, we're going to have to keep our recording posted for 30 days after the minutes are approved. So all the committees and boards that deal with certain criteria such as money or decision-making will have to do that. So we're going to have that available for people if they want to go back and look at that at any time for 30 days after the minutes are signed.
But as far as Victoria's question about identifying the individuals themselves,
We should have
looking at the names that are up there now, I'm not really sure
Don't we?
that I can identify all.
Via Zoom.
No, I know it. You're right. And unless we stop everybody coming in the middle of the meeting and asking them what their name is, all we have is Jenny or whatever.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things that actually Bonnie and I spoke about yesterday, or the day before, was also including some sort of virtual sign-in sheet.
Yeah.
So that if someone were to be in attendance, I know it doesn't necessarily potentially change their name on the screen, but it would at least give folks the ability to click a link, type in their name, and we could track that way.
Is,
Just the same way that we monitor, the list of folks coming.
yeah, is that something that can be accommodated easily by the
Yeah, we can
program?
set something up, yeah. Not necessarily directly in Zoom, but we would have it available that someone could click and then go and fill it out like a Google form. So, and they are, to answer Victoria's question, the Zoom attendees are on
The minutes. Yes.
separate.
Yeah.
Good point. I thank you for that as we continue to try to figure out how to conduct open meetings electronically.
Peter's going.
Is there any other?
Why do we have to be so particular?
Well, Sylvia, the question is, because you didn't go to the podium.
It's be too painful for anybody to be involved in anything.
Well, I typically mention at the beginning of the meeting that there is a sign-in sheet on the table by the door, and if you didn't sign it on the way in, please do so before we leave, so that we have a record of who was here in attendance. All these people that are attending are in attendance, but they don't have a sign-in sheet. So it's exactly the same thing. I don't want to belabor the point, but if it becomes an issue down the road, the minutes should reflect who was in attendance, and that's the
I
way
mean,
that.
anybody who speaks, it should be reported that so-and-so addressed the select board on this topic. But, I mean, things get too painful
Okay,
for everybody that's involved. I just think it's.
I thank you for those comments. I believe what,
Just to get their name on the slip, get here and write it down. That's the way I figured.
well,
I mean, too open is too open.
we want to,
Make sure you get up at the podium.
yeah,
I can't get up and down without.
Will be reprimanded.
I think everyone could hear Sylvia. For those of you that can't tell, because all you can see is the back of her head, that was Sylvia Jolivet. We want to encourage attendance at the meetings. Certainly Zoom has opened up an opportunity for people to attend. Even board members, if they happen to be out of town, can still attend the meeting, participate and vote. People can make their thoughts known if they happen to be out of town as well. I think it makes,
Central will take care of their needs.
Okay.
Honest to God,
I'm-
it is getting too much.
I'm not arguing with you, Sylvia. I
2-year-olds, maybe they are mentally.
I doubt if anybody who's in attendance is a 2-year-old. But anyways, any other public comments? Hearing none, I'll ask for approval of the minutes from our meeting of May 21st.
Well, Jen wasn't here.
Let's see,
Yeah,
three of us were here, right?
I was here for.
Oh, that's right, you were here.
Most of us. Come on.
So, probably the motion should come from,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And is that 2 abstentions? I don't know. What's the proper protocol?
I was here for some of it.
I would say she could vote on it, sure.
Okay.
You were here for the majority of it.
We'll see how that
We're
flies.
here till other business.
Yeah.
You made it through the,
9 o'clock hour.
yeah, you made it through the agenda.
Okay, the minutes are approved. We have a liquor license application from.
Yes, this is a new liquor license, first class liquor license for excuse me, Nong's Kitchen. Going into the former Ponce Bistro place at 4659 Main Street. We don't have any issues. None of the departments have issues with the application.
Want to take these together or no, we have to do it separately? I'll make a motion to approve the license for Nong's Kitchen at 4659 Main Street.
Second.
For a first class, and then second, but yeah,
Thank you for pointing.
I
it
didn't
out.
know if you heard her.
I did.
I was talking over
Don't do that. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
her.
Aye. That appears to be 5-0. Okay, moving right along. Possibly approve a first-class vending license application. This is the Ice Chip Ice Cream Cart in front of 4919 Main Street. It's the same location as last year.
It's an expansion though, isn't it? Because last year it was just shave ice.
They're here if you want to ask them the question.
Was it last year just shaved ice?
We did shaved ice in the.
You should come up to the
Yeah,
podium.
just so that
because
people can hear you at home.
Make sure everybody can hear you. Also, it's an opportunity to let people know.
In the summertime and apple cider donuts in the fall.
And now it's gonna include ice cream.
We have ice cream inside. It's just shave ice.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's, has anything changed in the application?
No.
Oh, okay, that's the best way to address that. Any,
I just am trying to remember, was this another exception and we just haven't updated? Like why is this in front of us? It is,
we have to do them every year.
oh, okay.
Right. And last time you asked how many, how many licenses we have out there. So currently we have two class ones. That's Nancy's and Sam's truck, ice cream truck. We have two class twos, the Hound Dog and the Jamaican Kitchen. And then we have one farmer's market class, which is a class 3. You'll have this one tonight as a class 1. And then at the next meeting, and our next meeting, there's an application pending for the taco truck, which would be class 1 also, I believe.
So,
But the limit is 6 on class 1 and class 2.
right. And we would be at,
Yeah, there, yeah.
would be at that limit. If,
6 per class.
6 per class.
We're not even close to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will move to approve the class 1 vending license for Main Street Decor LLC at 4919 Main Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved. Moving on to the next agenda item, possibly appoint a planning commission member.
So, Mr. Chairman, we met with 4 applicants and would like to recommend Meg Athay to the Planning Commission. She's a former attorney, been here since 2008 and living at in Ormsby Hill Village. And
You spell Mike's last name.
Athay.
I have her CV right here if you'd like to take a look at
Yeah,
it.
that's actually, well, I don't need it, but I can give it to Bonnie. Her last position was her own law firm, Athay and Associates in Washington, DC. And she's done a lot of real estate law, financing, and other commercial law matters. Without going too deeply into it, she's got plenty of experience in that field. I'll give that to Bonnie.
She's willing to serve.
And yeah, exactly.
And she has a pulse.
Mhm.
Right.
Steve?
What's her local affiliation? I mean,
She's retired.
How long has she been here?
I said
2008.
since 2008.
I didn't hear you.
Oh, well, that's amazing. It's the first person who's ever said that.
I just want to know what her affiliation is with the community. We need somebody strong in that committee.
Been here for 14 years.
Okay.
Does a lot of volunteer work.
Thank you.
Lovely human being.
Other comments or questions? Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Megathay to the Planning Commission Board. Effective immediately. Second.
Seconded. Further discussion at the board? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe that's 5-0. Does that bring us up to a full contingent there at the planning commission?
Mhm.
Yes, right.
Okay, Telling and Hillman, PC recently, I believe, concluded the audit.
They have, Kyle Lucius here from Telling Hillman, and you have a hard copy of the audit in front of you. I sent you e-copy earlier. And before Kyle gets going, I just want to bring out a couple pages to highlight. Excuse me. Page 6 actually has highlights for you. Page 14 has a balance sheet. Page 29 has been of interest over the year, and so that's the section that would have unassigned funds, and that question comes up often. There's a comment about the rec fund deficit that we spoke of. That's on page 33. And then the prior period adjustments is on page 49, which Kyle may address, but I sent those to you prior to last meeting. So without further ado, welcome.
All right. Thanks, Scott. I'm Kyle Lucier from Telling and Hillman. I'd like to first just thank you all for inviting us in this year to do your audit. It was our first year here for doing the audit for Manchester, and just want to thank everyone for Bonnie, Mike, Greta, who helped us out while we're here. We spent a lot of time here for almost 2 full weeks here at and everyone was very helpful. We appreciate all the work that everyone did with us. So I guess the first thing I'll just go over is just a little bit of what our role is in this process. Our job coming in to do the audit is really just to review the financial information that was provided to us and then give our opinion on if the financial information from the town accurately reflects the financial position of the town and is in conformity with GAAP and GASB financial standards. So one of the things that we're giving opinions on are our governmental activities, business type activities, and then each of the major and non-major governmental funds. So we'll see in the report, you'll see there's different statements for each of those levels that we audited. So just quickly going over, first page of the audit on the independent auditor's report, and this shows that we have a clean opinion on after our review. There's nothing that we're really stating that we found that's a concern for the financial statements. The next few pages, I'm going to go right to the financial statements now. We'll give a brief overview of those. On page 12 is kind of where the financial statements begin. And this is on page 12 this is where we have the statement of net position for the governmental and business type activities. These have extra things brought into them than the fund financials do. The fund financials are what I imagine you guys like to look at a lot and see how each fund is doing. And then this statement here is kind of bringing them all together. And then we have been adding in basically long-term debts that the funds don't have on their balance sheets, fixed assets they don't have. So that's what this one does for us. Page 13 is just our statement activities that just basically shows to get you to your net position, statement of net position. It says your expenditures and revenues for your governmental activities and your business type activities. And again, those originate from the funds with those adjustments brought in for reconciling of changes in long-term assets and long-term liabilities. Next page on page 14 is like Scott said here, that this is where we get into the governmental funds. This is where you can see the detail of all of your major governmental funds and then just a summary of the non-major funds here as well. In the back of the report, there is a detail of what makes up all of those non-major governmental funds. One thing of note on this page here on page 14, if you look at the ARPA fund, you'll see a total fund balance is 0 in that fund. And that is going to be different from the previous year. And that's one thing that kind of, again, what Scott mentioned is in our prior period adjustments, we did do a prior period adjustment to adjust out that position there because the ARPA funds are really unearned revenue until they're expended. So there's really no fund balance there in that fund. Let's see. Yeah, so the next page on page 16, we have our statement of revenues and expenditures for all of our governmental funds. I mean, in here, this is where we have the change in our each of the fund balances. So this is what your fund balance for each of your funds have changed by throughout the year, driven by your revenue and expenditures and transfers. In here is where we have the first time you'll see where the prior period adjustment line is on those funds. Just a quick, I just talked about the ARPA fund prior period adjustment. I'll just quickly go over another one here, some of the big ones here. In the general fund, we had we did a prior period adjustment to account for some FEMA money that was expended in the prior year, but no receivable was ever booked to show that the money was coming in for that for the money that was already expended. So that we did that to recognize the revenue of when FEMA came in the proper year. And then the next big thing on there for the general fund was that we had a prior period adjustment to match the delinquent taxes balance at the beginning of the year to the financial statements and the reports that we received to balance them from the year end to year close. So I mean, those are the big things for our prior period adjustments. So next set of pages, now we have our business type activity statements, also known as our proprietary funds. This is where your sewer and water fund come in. Again, we did have a couple prior period adjustments in here as well. One of the big one in here was just a prior period adjustment within the funds to reallocate the balances in the bonds. The total bonds. So we had some bonds that were allocated between multiple funds. And just the allocation got off schedule at some point in time. So we did a reallocation to get them back on this with their bond repayment schedules for each fund said they were going to be. And then I'm going to jump right back to the back of the report now. After going over the major just going over the financial statement. Page 67 is like page 66 and 67. I guess where I'll go to next. In here, this is just where we have our schedule of findings. So like I said before, these we didn't find anything that had made us to modify our opinion on the financial statements. But these are just our findings from just our testing of internal controls and things of that nature, and basically to bring out recommendations for some changes. So I'll just go over these with you guys. The first finding we had was under cash disbursements. In our testing, we found a check that was written that we couldn't find that was on an approved warrant. So it was just a finding against procedure of what's normally done. The next one here, payroll processing. It says we just at times when we were testing payroll that we didn't find sufficient backup to documentation of some part-time workers hours at work to or rates that they were supposed to be paid. So basically what it came down to is we couldn't really justify knowing that we knew that everyone else knows that this was people were getting paid what they're supposed to get paid. I'm not saying they weren't, but we just didn't see enough justification to say everyone understands it. Next one here is general fund checking account. The general fund checking account was reconciled to the bank statements, but not reconciled back to the general ledger. So let's led to the cash not reconciling back to the general from the bank statement to the ledger account. We had to recommend some adjustments to get there. And then the last thing here, just we've in our process and inquiry of everything this year, we noticed that it didn't sound like the town had a capitalization threshold for fixed assets. And again, that's not on the fund side of things, but on that government-wide set of statements where we have the governmental activities, and we just didn't say what kind of assets you're going to capitalize at what threshold. So we reviewed those fixed asset schedules and appreciation schedules and put things on there in conformity with after talking with Mike, and I think that maybe Scott was in on that too, and just the recommendation basically just adopting a formal policy on how you guys are going to capitalize your assets. And then the next page, it just is the same thing on here. It just has Scott's responses to those findings and what actions the town might take to on that. I guess from there I'll see if there's any questions for me.
Are those material weaknesses atypical or typical, or was this something you run into? I mean, one check might slide through. Do you find that to be somewhat typical, or?
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, they're not atypical.
Wouldn't be good, for example, to have 50 checks go sliding through.
Yeah, something like that is where we might have to qualify our opinion.
Yeah.
Is saying that if none of because basically what we're doing is we're testing the procedures, and those tests of our procedures gives us confidence in how things are recorded in the system. So if there was a lot more, or if we started testing big numbers, like let's say you had more that showed up, we did some more, end up doing more testing. Maybe we test some big, large transactions now.
Right.
Those large transactions aren't matching. That gives us might be a reason to have a qualified opinion on the financial statement. I would say this is one of those things that if it continually happens every year, these things continue, like the payroll processing and that cash disbursement one, a routine thing, I would say that, or start to say that the procedures in place and the controls in place probably aren't working well enough and they do need to be adjusted.
I have a question. When you're looking at other municipalities, are you doing any other evaluations for controls around technology or cybersecurity or anything along those lines?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that is something that we're trying to figure out more of that as we see towns blowing more, just kind of like tonight when you guys are talking about all the virtual stuff here. That's something we are still trying to figure out, and we are probably going to start having more robust IT testing at probably even just starting next year. So one thing that, as auditors, we go through a peer review process that basically we have other auditors come in and audit our audits every few years for that peer review process. And that's something that going through that process and going to talk with other auditors, we've acknowledged that is something we need to start doing some more testing on. But that's not something we did a robust one on this year.
I have a kind of a general question for you. We used to, once every 3 years, go through a process where we would put our audit out to bid and choose an auditor. And over an extended period of time, we got pretty comfortable with one auditor. And I think we still went through that process of soliciting input, but we stuck with the same auditor for quite a while. Does your firm have a position on that? I mean, I know auditing is something you do, and you probably would like to have as many clients as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I would say everybody's different on that. I would say we don't take a stance on it on that on that being good or bad either way. I mean, I think it's the comfort level of what you as the board find. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a policy that says you're going to go out to bid you're going to do requests for proposals every 3 years, like you said, and putting it out there and changing every 3 years. I would say if you do it every year, that might be a little more concerning. As I'm just thinking in a new one, being the third auditor in 3 years, you start to wonder why. That's because one thing, I mean, doing a first year audit is always difficult because you aren't familiar with what you're looking at. So it does take some time to get it. So like we spent a lot of time this year here just kind of trailblazing our paths. So next year that we have documented paths to follow because basically when we get here, we don't even know what we don't know yet.
Yeah.
So that's why a fast, high turnover is concerning, but yeah, a procedure like 3 years is not.
And Ivan, the first years, as Kyle said, is most difficult, but it's also enables them to look with fresh eyes, and you can see that they've found 3 or 4 items that we had to correct. So it's good to have that turnover occasionally.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, talking about these 4 items, you have management's response from the auditor's perspective. Is that a good response?
Yes. We felt, Scott's response was very acceptable.
I just follow up on that. Is there a mechanism in place where you have a direct line of communication with a member of the select board in addition to speaking with the town manager?
So normally that would happen if we have issues that arise.
They did send out letters to 2 of the select board.
Okay, I just,
And,
Okay, so thank you, Scott. So part of we do every audit.
Yep.
We'll send we call inquiries out to two of the select board members, 2 employees, and 2 people in management. And they're fraud questionnaires is basically what they are. But just a direct line to talk about something like this with, we don't normally do that with the board unless
Unless there's a problem, but
there's having issue.
General in scope and basically, I'm pretty sure the answers that we provided were kind of one-word answers. But it opened the opportunity for if there was concern in one of those areas, we could have expanded on that. So
Yes.
I
mean, just to kind of expand on what Ivan was just saying there, is that most people believe that you get an audit done to find fraud. And that's, again, like I said, that's not our purpose, isn't to find fraud. We could find fraud as part of it, but that our purpose isn't there here looking for fraud. Most fraud's detected by asking people if they think something's doesn't seem right. And then you dig in after that.
Going back to changing up auditors every 3 years, the auditors that are auditing you, do you use a different firm routinely or is it a same?
Yeah, I mean, it can be the same issues that you might have here. Is like, it depends if who's available and can do it. If someone's that's been doing it for a while is available, you'll probably get them to do it. This year we ran into the same problem as you actually. Steve Love used to do our peer review, and he was no longer available. And
Right.
we had a new firm doing it this year,
Reviewer.
and we had to go out of state and get someone to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike DeCubelis is online, I think. Mike, can you hear us?
Now, Mike loves to speak publicly.
I can.
Do you have any comments you want to add?
Well, the only comment I can add at this time, and this was a conversation I had with Steve Love as he was retiring, and he basically informed me that a lot of the local and smaller accounting firms aren't doing this anymore, auditing municipalities. So when I went out with my RFP, I would really say that even try doing it every 3 years. I don't think we're going to have any luck, because I got no responses, really. I mean, I did get the Telling and Hillman response, and I got another response from an auditor that was in Maine.
I thought best practices was more like 7 years anyway. I don't think that from what I experienced on not-for-profit boards, it's 7 years, not 3.
We see, I want to say, we see a wide range of that. We see 3, 5, some that don't really have a formal policy at all.
I'm just afraid that as time goes on, trying to find another auditor is going to get more and more difficult.
Well, actually, when Steve was here, making his last report, before he retired, he kind of expressed the same thing, that there's not a lot of people excited about getting into the auditing field. We're very happy that you, as a relatively young individual, are excited about doing this, and maybe we'll be around for.
I think the other side of that too is that it's not just it's not just auditing, it's the governmental auditing that is a specialty. And it is not one that you see a lot of people getting into. We see more people leaving to it.
Yeah, I think this, I'm really very happy with this document, and I think it seems to be very complete. And as I said before, or as Scott had said, with a new set of eyes, maybe exposed a few things that had been an ongoing, I won't say that there was a huge issue, but it was an ongoing material weakness, as you call it.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of the things like shies is really just we just recognize a few timing issues of recognition of things. I mean, that's really all that was.
Steve, can you just step up to the podium, please?
Well, I think it's agreeable with Ivan that you did a great job. I think there are a few things that, I know I received a sewer thing to fill out and send back to you. But again, I don't have much time, so I'm going to get right to the point, and I'm going to be direct. Is there a chance that there has been unethical violations or pilferage or a sense of fraud committed in relationship to your completed audit?
No. Oh, not that we know of.
Are you required to send the audit to the attention of the state auditor and the attorney general?
No.
As I reviewed the audit, mind you, in due respect, having read page 66 and 67 indicated by causes unknown, can you identify that?
The causes?
Mm-hmm.
No. We did not identify what the causes of the findings were.
So why can't you do that? Why can't you identify that as a cause? What is the cause of these things happening?
Oh, Steve, if you look under the criteria, it explains what came to be and why they flagged that. And then they describe what the condition was, which caused an effect. And then you see effect down below. So,
And then
and they have a recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, I was just wondering why the word cause was there if we needed to identify what had happened, but I think I see that now with your comments,
Sure.
you know, which are very well done. As far as, and why would the select board not know anything about GAPP? That you're requiring now, is that correct?
Generally acceptable accounting practice?
Yeah.
Sorry, what was your?
There's something on the agenda tonight that you're looking at passing.
Yeah, so if you look at like that fourth finding,
Yep.
it's called the capitalization threshold for capital assets. And we didn't have that in place. So tonight, if they approve it, we will have some in place after that.
Correct. And again, I do appreciate what you have done because I think it identifies when the check that you said was not signed. Is that, Greg, what you all sign in dockets?
Well, a check got through that wasn't on the warrant apparently. So it just was a human error, most likely.
I think,
I don't know what the cause was.
if I can speak to that.
Yeah.
I think it was a check that we had to redo.
Oh, it was
and so then it came out on a separate warrant.
on a different warrant.
Right, than the original warrant, and then
Yeah.
it just didn't get signed.
That's not something, I mean, when I sign it, if it's not there.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand that. But what my concern was before, Ivan, was having those dockets every period or every 4 weeks or whatever come to the select board so there's more eyes than just Greg or whomever is with Greg. I know Greg and whoever's signing them, there's no problem there, but if there's more eyes, you're not gonna have.
We used to review and sign warrants at a meeting.
We did.
Years ago, and it was decided that it may not be the most efficient use of meeting time.
Well, I don't think
And that was
everybody needs
when we
to
went
sign it.
format.
I think just get a copy and review it. Just to maybe help Greg or,
Well, I don't know whether or not are the warrants available publicly? I don't know if that can.
They're made available for public
You
record.
can come in and request to see the,
Any one of the select board members can see it anytime they want to come.
yeah. I mean, the warrant reflects the expenditure that's in the budget. So if
while you're holding that.
basically, yeah, I mean, basically what we're looking at in this is what went out in checks that we've dispersed. So you don't necessarily have to look through 500, entries on a spreadsheet. It's here.
No, I understand that, but
I mean, we do, of all those entries, Steve, I look for any abnormal. I look for big numbers. I check, I can't question the staff on every single check.
No, I understand.
But we do talk routinely about major expenditures. And we talk routinely on staff numbers also if something looks a little odd, and often it'll just be somebody, pulled time, for example.
And then our treasurer also, as he's signing off of them, reviews the invoices with the checks before he signs them, so he raises questions.
He does too.
And I think this brought to light a couple of other great things which we
Yes.
do.
Sure did.
Which is great.
I know Ivan gets a little upset with me when I request a forensic audit. So can you identify a forensic audit for us?
Like what it is? Yeah, so forensic audit is basically you have you want someone to come in and drill into a specific part of your books and review transactions and really verify a specific section, not the overarching financial statement itself. Is what the nuts and bolts of what a forensic audit would do. So you wouldn't do a forensic audit of the entire financial statement. You're gonna do a forensic audit on something specific in there. So it might be like, might say you think something's wrong in the general fund, and you have identified, and you dig down into something specific in there to
But the-
review and like basically review and test.
Would the need for a forensic audit be triggered by something that the auditors found that seemed like an anomaly in the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely could warrant it. If I mean, it's usually something that you're going to do a forensic audit on something if you suspect that there is some fraudulent activity somewhere as well.
And you would recommend that to them?
Yes.
If there was something in here that you found that they needed to address with what Greg had?
Right. I mean, if it came down to that, we'd qualify our opinion on the financial statements as well. We would not give a clean report on the financial statement if that was something that was suspected.
And do you recommend, though, a forensic audit be done every 5 to 10 years, or what's your?
No. I think a forensic audit is done as needed. When there's something that, if there's a suspected reason to do it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. I just one other thing on forensic audits. You wouldn't do one as just a shot in the dark to try to figure out if everything reconciled, because you wouldn't even know where to aim your weapon. There'd have to be something there that made you concerned about a certain area of the budget. If you were going to do, if there is such a thing, a forensic audit of the whole thing, it would be so cost prohibitive and time consuming that and would probably be a complete waste of taxpayers' money and the auditor's time. But if there was something that it would be drilling into a very specific part of it much deeper to find out what the numbers all are, why there might be some sort of discrepancy there. But we've never seen those kind of discrepancies since the 1970s, which some of us remember. We did a complete revamp of our whole system at that point, not giving any one individual that kind of control over the money. But ancient history, and it was a nickel here and a dime there, as I remember. It added up to about $135,000.
No, and something we said earlier was like the fraud questionnaires that we send out to the board and people here working for the town. I mean, those are our areas, a time where you could start to suspect something when someone tells you that they're being asked to do things that they don't feel comfortable doing by someone's in a superior or someone else. I mean, that's when you start looking into going down that road potentially.
I think I take quite a bit of comfort in the fact that, we've got a new auditor here that seems to have done a pretty, started from scratch, built their own opinions on everything, and came up with basically the same report that we see every year.
Recommendations that we have not had before.
Well, I would disagree with that. I think almost every year there was some recommendation. There might have been two, three. And I can remember talking to the auditors and they say, we don't feel like we're doing our job unless we tell you have to do something. And, they said, overall, everything looks really healthy. Not speaking for this auditor, but, we could probably do a little better job in this area, but we certainly haven't unearthed any kind of, problem.
I mean, so something that's not in here as well, but we acknowledge as we're doing it is which could go to the cause. It's not, we don't know if it's the cause, but there was just a high amount of turnover in the finance department since the last audit. I mean, there's a lot of new people learning new roles, a lot of changes happening, and that's when you have so many at this are fairly new at the same time. I mean, that could be one of the reasons. That's, I mean, you don't see it here, but that's one thing that we noticed when we were working on it.
Well, that's what you noticed, that
I mean, the finance, I mean, there were the staff in the finance department, there was a lot, are all fairly new here, so. I mean,
Yeah,
that,
but New town manager too.
yep.
Any,
There's a question.
oh, Mike, yeah.
I confess I have not read the audit report yet, but I do have some questions. As I understand, you're dependent on the financial statements that are given to you by the management and disclosures from them. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you review the town report?
Yeah, so we look at the town report and the budget from the town report, yes.
Okay. Did you feel that was an adequate disclosure of the finances of the town?
Yes.
Okay. At a meeting in January, it was disclosed that there had been a difference between journal entries and actual transactions. Were you briefed on that?
I guess I'm not aware of what happened.
Okay. Are you familiar with the property tax relief reserve fund as one of the special funds?
Is that the CERC fund?
No. That's local option tax money that goes in.
Without digging into it, I can't say I remember that off the top of my head.
Okay. So you
Let me
didn't,
get those questions. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I can do this one if you want.
I'm gonna go put sweats on.
Can we, those are questions we can't answer.
So I guess I don't, is the question I'm familiar with it?
I can help you. I think what came up and correct me if I'm wrong, but we were talking about, when we have, a shortfall in the general fund sometimes, we draw from the taxpayer relief fund. Is that what you're talking about? Is that,
yeah,
yeah, and so we figured out at a meeting that, there were funds that we had, said that we were going to withdraw from certain other capital funds that hadn't actually been moved. And my concern around that was that if we're not actually taking them out and they're remaining invested, there's a risk that they depreciate, that the stock market sometimes goes down rather than up. And that would probably be best practices to actually draw down the funds from that if we approve a project and we don't actually spend them for 12 months or 18 months, we don't take them out of the invested funds until we actually need them. And I think there's some risk to that. So I think that's what we're talking about, right?
well, there's also the issue of whether the voters ever approve those withdrawals. And I think the select board said you were going to check with your attorney. I know that in 1998, when the Property Tax Relief Reserve Fund was established, the minutes reflect that all withdrawals from that fund were supposed to be approved by the voters. So if it wasn't in a budget decision, which an over expenditure by definition wasn't, then my question is, what's the authority for making that kind of a withdrawal?
It's a good question.
And similar to that, the select board has made a policy of taking $50,000 a year out of the Property Tax Relief Reserve Fund without approval of the voters to pay to the Manchester Business Association, which is not approved in the budget.
Our general fund, no. That's in our general fund.
Beg your pardon?
It's in our general fund.
No,
I don't believe it is.
It's budgeted.
It's budgeted in our,
Appropriation.
it's budgeted in our general.
Used to be,
It is now. It's because we
is now.
have a contract with them for that.
Yeah,
It's not an appropriation.
Sure.
I think the last couple of years it's
Last
been
couple of
an ever
years.
done.
Okay,
It was, yeah,
take that back.
maybe.
But you're right. I think that before it came out of the taxpayer,
And it was voted on
Really
too. It
fun.
was a warrant, it was on a warrant article.
listen, I think that I think you're right. I think that
No,
there's
it's not on a warrant article this year.
No, it wasn't
this
this year
year.
because it's a
3 years
line
ago,
item.
maybe it was
But
originally
it
put
used
in
to
there.
be.
Okay, thank you.
It kind of puts you on the spot because you weren't prepared to answer this, but no, it's fine. The discussion that Mike was talking about that took place under our budget discussion was, and I think I noticed the discrepancy. I saw a very unusual, actual transfer from this property tax relief fund. Because, and it was unusual because it was an odd number of dollars ending with a 1 or something. And the voters approve at town meeting a transfer of up to, in that year, it was $1,350,000. And that was what was approved, and what was actually transferred was greater than that. So in doing a little bit of research on it, because town meeting the previous year had been virtual, and then everything was voted on by Australian ballot, but the informational meeting was virtual. We didn't have an actual town meeting. The article, when it made the transition from being something that was voted on the floor to being something that was voted in the ballot box, lost the language. It was consolidated. And Mike will argue with me on this because he's going to say the voters have to approve it anyways because of the 1998 decision. But it no longer had the language, what it said in the original, and I think it's back in there now, I'm not sure. It is back in there. What it said in the original article, back when we used to vote it from the floor, was the budget anticipates 1 million, let's say it's $1,350,000 be transferred in to balance the budget from local option taxes. If local option taxes exceed, the actual revenue exceeds that number, the balance, anything above 1,350,000 will be transferred into this account. If actual revenues do not reach 1,350,000, then we'll pull from the property tax relief fund to make up the difference, if you follow that. And that was what was approved year after year after year until we went to virtual town meeting and voting in the voting booth. That particular language was muddled and lost. So when I saw that the numbers didn't reconcile to what the budget showed, and we'll call the number 1.350 million, and it was 1.4 something million, it raised a concern because I also noticed that our property tax relief fund balance was below what we had anticipated it was going to be. And so what that told me was that more money had been transferred out of the fund than what the voters had approved. What I didn't realize was that we had lost that language. The budget itself did say that 1.35 million would be transferred, but in actuality, that's not what happened. I think we've got it back under control now. I
do. I'm curious if you ever got an answer from your council about the applicability of the 1988 motion.
1998, I believe.
98.
I don't have anything from the attorney on that.
I'll look into that. I think we got an answer, but I don't recall.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I'll check and get back to you.
Steve.
Is there a way, and we talked about this before, having the budget ready prior to town meeting, except for giving it to the auditor, whatever we need to do to have it ready for town meeting? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I don't see any advantage to that. I mean, the question was for anybody that couldn't hear, was should we submit the approved budget to the auditors prior to asking the voters to vote on it? it really wouldn't mean anything to have the auditors look at that?
I don't think that's what he said.
Oh, you don't think that was the question?
I think the question was, would we have the audit for the prior year
Oh,
that finished in July of the prior year available at town meeting? So for instance, we would have confirmed totals for the special funds.
well,
We haven't seen.
you may notice that, in the actual numbers that are available in the town report, they're from 2 years prior, because those are the only numbers that we have available to us. It would be pretty, I mean, you can see how long it took us to get the audit from the year that ended about a year ago. We're finally just getting the audit on that. It's not something that happens quickly.
Well, if I could ask a question, what would you need from the town in order to have the audit ready for March town meeting,
Um,
and when?
I mean, it's a good question. I'll speak to this year first.
Yeah,
So this year, when we knew about coming in to do this audit and notified, we've been accepted, we'd already filled out most of our 2023 year ends. That's what got you guys pushed out as far out as it's ended up did. And then again, the first year takes a lot longer to do here, takes a lot longer back in the office to just, again, create these templates that we can use now for next year, financial statements for one. So I do think it'll be it'll be a quicker process for us to get a turnaround for next year than it was this year. To get it done by that time, I don't have a really solid answer for you tonight on saying that if you do this if you get us this by this time, you get us, or that we'll have it done by a certain time. I'm not one that schedules the audits when they get done. So I don't feel like I can really answer that question to anyone's real satisfaction tonight.
is 6 months enough time?
It depends. So it depends. I'm gonna say it depends. As any accountant does on their answer. Yes, I would say for the most part, 6 months is enough time, but we do have other clients as well that we in our engagements with have specific dates in our engagements already.
If we were their only customer, we could probably get that done, but we're not, and we're subject to their availability.
And
Yes.
just for that, we are going to try to get it done. See if we can't get it done for in that time frame. We're not going to I can't sit here and guarantee that we can. Well, that is going to be our goal we have.
You want that before that, before town meeting, so you would have more information available to you.
I think any information that we can have is helpful. We will look into see if it's feasible to accelerate the.
I just think it would be helpful for you all.
Yeah, it may or may not be possible to get that done, but we can certainly do a little research.
It's almost impossible because, we're not their only customer, and we can't demand we go first and get us done. They've got school districts and towns and all kinds of customers, and we're just new to them right now. Like Cal said, the first time around, first year takes a lot more.
Yeah.
Now, next year will be a couple months earlier, but most likely we won't have it ready for town meeting. It would be very unusual for that to happen.
I don't think we've ever had an audit.
Yeah, but I think you're right. I mean, I've been here a long time, and thank you.
I feel like we're looking at two different things too. Like, I feel like this report's so different than looking at what we're working on in, December and January.
Right.
It's just not the same. I mean, it's the same information, it's just totally different format.
Yeah,
Well, we wouldn't have been putting in the same fund balances for 2 years in a row.
That's true.
yep.
But we've.
Yeah, but I think we've got, I mean, we've put different policies in place now that will address that and hopefully make it work better going forward.
Including the next item on the agenda.
There's somebody with their hand raised or
Run
their.
away.
She found this on it.
Okay, nobody, so anyways, we thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Thanks, Kyle.
Chris, clarified this.
does this require action?
No. The next one does, which is part of it.
They sign it, yeah. Oh, I don't think they're signing. Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, so as a result of the audit, tonight we're reviewing and possibly approving a proposed capital asset management policy. And that is, that will meet generally accepted accounting practices. Scott, you want to?
Yeah, so, I mean, of those findings, this was the least aggravated one. It was only because we didn't have it in place. So they said you should have some basically in place, which is a depreciation schedule of assets. And so we put this together. Mike worked with the auditors and came up with this, and this is acceptable to them. And you can see on there, land, buildings, heavy equipment, vehicles, infrastructure and bridges and office equipment. So obviously each one of those items are going to have different lifespans. And so we didn't have anything in place that recognized that. So tonight, hopefully you'll approve this policy and we'll have that in place, and that takes care of that ding from the auditors.
Is this the format that he recommended, the auditors recommended, like the fee schedule and all that? That's kind of.
Yes, yeah. We asked them for a template of some type, and they didn't really have a good one. And Mike came up with this one. I think he stole parts from his former employer, Randolph. But we did give this to the auditors and too.
You're looking for a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to move that we adopt the proposed capital asset management policy plan as presented in the package. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's 5-0.
So if we could jump into our sewer commissioners' outfits and do the same now for the sewer funds. And tomorrow morning, the water commissioners meet, we'll get them to do the same.
Pretty much exactly the same, except that allocated for water and sewer.
Yeah, it's-
Go for it, Greg.
Make a motion to accept the capital asset management policy for water and sewer funds.
So, yeah,
Those are.
thank you for that. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Just
Is
sewer.
it the same policy that applies to both water and sewer that has to be approved by both boards?
Yes,
Yes. Okay, so the motion is appropriate.
yes.
Okay.
Well, I would hope so, because I think we're all on the bottom of that page too.
Yeah, but as sewer commissioners,
Right. Well, does it have to be done separately?
yeah, the water department's meeting first thing in the morning.
We just say amend that
Meeting
motion
tomorrow
to
morning
sewer.
to approve it from the water.
So we have two, do we have two motions on the table?
No.
No, we don't.
You,
No, we don't. You're
you
right.
made a
You're
motion
right.
that
No,
we,
no, I got confused.
as the sewer commissioners, vote to approve the capital asset management policy for water and sewer funds,
Which is the title of.
which is the title of it.
Yeah.
So I think it's the appropriate motion after
Okay.
discussion and,
On I know this is the technicality of the document, but this document, if it does need to be approved by the water commissioners, it's only asking for the signatures of the select.
I think it's gonna be two separate documents.
We were gonna squeeze them in down below.
Are you gonna put it on the same,
Yeah.
gonna squeeze it in by tomorrow?
We could make a page 3 instead.
Okay.
And there's room. There's only 3 of us.
Yeah, it's true. And you already signed above, so.
It's gonna be a separate motion.
I know.
Okay,
Okay, are we ready for two different hats? Are you ready for the question? All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. That sounds like 5-0. It is 5-0 and it's approved.
And the pen too, please. No, are we signing?
Sign, yes, I'm just gonna have Jonathan sign
As
that.
it goes down, send it with the pen. I didn't bring my pen.
I didn't bring one in.
Here's an extra if you want. So keep your pen.
Please.
Yeah, Karen. Can you move to the podium so people at home can hear you?
Hi, my name's Karen Gariak. And if Scott can answer a question for me. When I was at the last meeting, you guys were talking about Christos and the parking situation. Does that go back to the Development Review Board, or was it already approved? And then they were just looking for a dollar amount per parking
You
space?
want me to answer that now in this section?
Yeah, while we're signing, go ahead.
Okay, it doesn't have to, Karen. If they took the terms that the select board set, remember they set it at $2,000 a parking space. And if they took the terms that the DRB had issued in their report, then they don't have to go back to anybody else. But I have heard rumors that they might go back to the DRB, so they want different terms. And if they do that, it has to start like the 30-day warning all over again.
Okay, so if it doesn't go back to DRB, it's approved as is,
Correct.
and nobody can appeal it?
I think there's an appeal time period on the DRB decision. I don't remember what the number of days are.
30 from the original, from May 1?
You may be correct.
Okay, thank you, that's it.
Okay, getting back to the agenda, review and possibly appoint members to the
Oh, it's newly created, word, sorry.
So I guess let's take it one step at a time.
So I have,
Yeah, a few meetings ago, a couple of meetings ago now, I think, Jonathan had submitted a proposal for forming the committee and a possible makeup of the committee. And this is the first time that we're officially discussing that as an agenda item. And I guess it's a little bit of a chicken and egg kind of thing. As we try to figure out what the mission of the committee is without having a commission put together where we can get their input on as to what their thoughts are on that. So is just thinking out loud, it seems kind of weird to form a committee before we really have an idea as to what they should be doing. But at some point, we've got to take that step and get the ball rolling. So I guess I'd like to hear people's thoughts on what should happen first. And certainly, it's been warned in a way that we can just discuss any part of it here this evening, as far as the formation of the committee or the makeup of the committee itself, or actually starting to appoint people to the committee. I think if we accept the idea that there should be somebody from the select board, somebody from the planning commission, somebody from DRB, we have people from those boards that have stepped up and said they'd be willing to serve. I think we can easily choose the people from the governmental boards. The part that's going to require a little more thought and process will be getting people from the general public. And we want to let people know that we're forming a new committee. We want to let people make application and not overlook somebody because they didn't know this was happening.
Sure. And Ivan, what I would like to say is that I agree with you that, I think in the original discussion, we talked about the fact that we want to get as much input from the actual group as possible to really fine tune the goals and the goals and the direction that this committee would go in. However, I do believe that it's in our best interest, based on the ambiguity and everything that happened over the prior housing task force, is that we at least set the ball in motion within the actual committee being formed. Like, we want this to happen. That will be under, the auspices of the select board, and then set the basics, the formation. What is the general purpose of the committee? And then, and leave it open to the fact that it can be modified at a later time with the purpose, with the approval of the select board. I've had, after the first meeting, Scott, you put me in contact with Gordon. Gordon and I have had quite a long discussion about him supporting it from a staff position. I've also reached out to members of the Planning Commission and the DRB, and I've received, varied interest from both groups. And I certainly have, I think, the folks that are probably going to be the most interested in being part of this and want to make the time commitment, and I think would be beneficial to it. I do believe that as part of the strategy that I had outlined originally was that this would be the time, this would kind of be the timeframe that we would approve and move forward with the actual formation of the committee. We would have the finalization of who we believe would be interested, and potentially the selections for the governmental boards, the select board, the DRB and Planning Commission by next meeting. But as long as the committee is actually formed, then we could actually go out and start advertising, putting it out there through various means, through networks, through newspapers, through social media, whatever the case may be, to try to bring as wide of net as possible, to bring in letters of intent and applications to be a member of this committee. And then we would make the decision after it, based on what the turnout would be in terms of response. We would have some sort of, hopefully a final group of 4, because that would be the remaining of the 7, for the first meeting in July of the select board. So right before the 4th of July. I think that was what I had originally outlined as a potential timeline. I've started a potential resolution, like here's the select board's going to establish, here's what the composition is. It outlines some basic responsibilities, needs assessment, policy development, community engagement, but it doesn't say we want you to do something on X or something on Y. It's stating, here are the general goals and responsibilities.
Been a while since I've looked at your document, so I'm trying to remember. I think one of the big questions in my mind is, what should the municipality's role be in this larger issue, and what's the responsibility of the municipality, and anything that happens, hopefully something will happen, will be in the area of public and private partnership, and private financing. And so I think one of the things that committee members, I'm sure everybody will have great ideas coming in, but I think one of the things that we really have to figure out fairly early on in the game, what is the municipality's role?
Sure. And I think one of the things that I did outline in this, which I know I haven't distributed to you guys yet, but essentially in the responsibilities, that their role is to develop and recommend policies to the select board that promote affordable housing and sustainable community development, foster community involvement and gather input through public meetings, surveys, and outreach efforts, and work with local organizations, governmental bodies, and residents to support and implement community development initiatives. So the goal of in my view, of the municipality's efforts is that we have members of the three most influential boards or committees or commissions here as an active member of this committee, able to bring experience, knowledge, and communication with them from those boards in an effort to look at this in a very big picture, holistic view and say, what are the things that we want to accomplish? How are we going to get there? And then bring those options to the Planning Commission if it's something that they believe that here's an idea that we could potentially think that could improve housing availability. They could go to the DRB and say, here's something or a potential change that we think might be something that could help the efficiency of the process there, or from the select board, something greater. Obviously, the role of this and the municipalities made very clear. We're not building houses. We are not building houses. I will say it again. We are not building houses.
You giving money away?
That's not up for I'm not discussing that right now. I mean, it certainly could be a part of a.
Problem.
Yeah, hold on.
Get real.
Wait, hold on. Let's just wait till,
I'm gonna have to stay home.
wait till we can recognize our.
I can't stand it.
So, I think at minimum, I would like to see a move forward from the select board to say, let's form this committee with an agreed makeup and understand that the role of this committee is yet to be defined, however, still very focused on housing, which is a part of community development. It's a part of building a stronger community. It's building places where we can, have economic development because of housing. We can continue to support our businesses because of housing. The fine tuning of where that board may see itself going and focusing its attention from the go, that's not for us to determine. It is something that we need to set the ground rules, say this is the expectation, and let that organization.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
Yeah.
So I think in your enthusiasm, Jonathan, you preemptively jumped into a well thought out, plan, clearly. My understanding is that in the original reading of the proposal under other business, we haven't even gotten to the number of members in the committee. So, and then the next thing that happened was, I believe your press release that I think you probably wrote went out, I think somewhat, prematurely, and indicated that you had garnered significant support from the board. While I agree with the formation of a committee, there's a lot of things that I didn't have an opportunity to disagree with, but do disagree with. Probably more in the sense of what the municipality's role in this process is going to be. But I think we need to slow down in a sense. You just said what we need to do right now, which is actually form the committee and also agree to the number of people on the committee. And, I want to be really careful that you understand that press release doesn't accurately reflect, I think, the entire board's feeling, and in a way it was intimated that was the case. Number one. And also, again, I recognize your enthusiasm for it. And I agree. I think, the housing issue is something we need to tackle, like the whole country is tackling a housing issue. But I would warn to be very, very careful where it comes across as speaking for the entire board. That's something that came up through this process that we're just getting going on. And I wanted to call attention to that. So I think where we are right now is discussing the formation of this committee and the number of committee members. That's where we are. And you read the proposal, and I appreciate the proposal, but I think it was premature to release a plan that we as a board hadn't even had a chance to discuss.
I don't necessarily disagree with you,
Yeah.
Greg. I think that the fact is why that was released, or why I said that, was I was asked for what the proposal was. And I provided that to the press.
There's plenty in that release that gives the impression that the board was in consensus. The word consensus comes up.
Okay.
And it also makes, there's lots of things about it I question, and I think we need to be very careful. I don't go out and speak on behalf of the board, and I don't intimate what the other members are thinking. I try and be very careful if I'm asked anything to say my opinion, and it may not reflect the opinion of the entire board.
And I had no intentions of.
I know you
Yeah,
didn't, but
I
it
want to be
comes,
very clear. Okay.
it comes across
So-
like that. And the other thing is, we're not nearly down the road that was paved in that press release. We are simply at how many people are going to comprise this committee.
Okay. I want to back up and say that this was presented as this was a proposal to the select board. Okay. On the last page, there is a timeline of where I felt that we should be following.
Right.
So tonight's meeting was to review and a final proposal and potentially create or, build this, officiate this committee,
And I
right?
think, as I say, I think there are a lot of really good points that you make. We're just not there yet, but
And that's fine. And I don't disagree with you. This is a grand view. Okay, this is what I think
Right.
personally, as a citizen and as a member of this board, speaking for myself, that's what I believe we should be doing.
right.
Now, I understand, and I said, this is a draft. There are going to be revisions. That is just I didn't know that if I brought that to you, that I wasn't going to sit up here and everyone was just going to go, nah, we don't need that. So I was trying to give you as much meat on the bone.
You gave it to us and then went one step further and presented it to the public in a way that I think was somewhat misleading in certain areas. As I said, I agree with you on some things. I don't necessarily agree with the whole proposal. And I don't think we were, the impression is that you have had the ball and are running with it towards the goal line. This board isn't necessarily blocking for you, okay? So we're not all on the same team. And we need to get on the same team, and we need to make sure that what's communicated is appropriate. Okay, that's number one. Again, going back to where I think we are, how many people are going to be on this committee? And I agree with you, we need a committee.
Yeah.
Other than that, once we have that, I think we can make some statements, make some concrete statements.
I also want to make it clear that the day after that meeting, I almost immediately received an email from you, including now that I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially now that the committee is moving forward, why don't you try to take the ball on this and keep running? I can't remember word for word, but I did it. Now I realize that's not the select board's, the select board hasn't approved of it. And then in the subsequent meeting, when it was brought up again, Ivan, you and I, we discussed, where we were in the process. And, and in the subsequent meeting since then, there was also discussion of whether we can't approve put members on the board until we've actually created the board, which
Committee.
or committee, sorry. So I understand that. And that's when I took that as there was an agreed upon, at least to some extent, that at least there should be someone reaching out, finding out who's interested in being a member of this board.
And that was news to me too, by the
Am I
way.
able to say something?
Yeah.
I think the missing piece of this whole thing is that we've gotten a presentation from you. We've never had a discussion. I've never heard a single word from Jan. I've really only heard that one statement that you made earlier. There's a lot of great stuff here that I think we can all agree on some of the things. But when it comes as a timeline and a draft, and this is how it's going to be done, we haven't really talked about it. We haven't really, as a board, talked about this as an agenda item. It's just been, I think that this is something we need to discuss. And I'm not trying to tap the brakes. I just think that I truly have not heard from any of the other members on this matter at all. So
And I haven't either.
So
yeah,
let's start at square one.
let's do it.
Do we want to form a committee
Yeah.
to address housing?
May I make a comment before you?
No.
Yes, hold on one second.
I don't think we even have anything to comment on yet. Let's get some kind of an action on the floor so that then, Steve, go ahead. I see the look on your face.
Victoria has her hand up.
Oh, Victoria does too.
We're never going to get anything done if we keep doing this.
It's surely beneficial, there's no question. And I think that by Jonathan taking the hand on this is fine. We had with the last task force, as we identified it, correct? It was a selected committee that had a vision already, okay? You had the BCRC, you had the legislators, look, this is our town, okay? First of all, you all are the select board. You need to set up a goal and a mission of what you want that committee to do with what he's proposed ideas, and they need to go with it. That's what a committee is. Don't select your committee first.
Oh,
That's my.
We're not selecting, we're just trying to.
No, I understand.
We're just trying to
where you're
What I-
going, but-
approve the.
I think we need to establish that we're going to create a committee. Otherwise, the rest of this conversation is just spinning our wheels. So let's establish that.
At some point, Mr. Chairman, there was talk of an 8-member board. I don't know why that was, but I just wanted to. And I'm not sure if you
I
had
don't think
said
that's a
it.
day one item anyway. What if we've 12 excellent people? We're just going to say,
Does it need to be limited?
I think we have to take it. step
Why
by
don't
step.
we? Let's not nail that down, but we'll say minimum requirements for a committee would be 7 people. 3 of those would be a member of the select board.
But you still didn't take the
Member-
pulse of the other members on whether they want a committee.
Well, I know, but
So why are we talking about the details of the committee?
well, you were just talking about it. You were
Well,
just saying maybe there
'cause
should be 12. and I'm
Because
just
Greg
saying-
was saying it should be 7 or 8.
Okay.
Like,
All right, let's start at square one. Do we want to form a housing committee?
Yes.
Uh, The consensus appears to be that we want to form a housing committee. I don't think we need a motion yet. What do we think the makeup of that committee should be? I think Jonathan's idea has merit. We talked about it at the time that he presented it under other business. I thought there was a potential to get it too heavily loaded with government people, because we were talking about maybe 2 from the select board or 2 from, I can't remember what exactly we were talking about. I said, well, let's establish a minimum of 1 and a minimum of 4 people from outside of local government, a minimum of members at large. But however, a member of one of these boards could be a member at large. And so we could wind up with 2 people from a board or commission. That was what we talked about. But we talked about Gordon Black, and should he be a member or should he just be staff support? If Gordon's a member, I think we probably ought to expand the committee, because then we're getting too heavily weighted by government people. So if we are in agreement that we want to form a committee, now the makeup of the committee is under discussion. and I don't have strong feelings one way or the other on Gord. He's a really bright guy, brings a lot to the table. Going to have an effect on how the committee operates, whether he's a voting member or not. What do y'all think?
100%.
That he should be a voting member.
They should be a voting member?
I agree.
Then I think we need to expand the size of the committee by one more.
Do we have a size of the?
We were at a minimum of 7.
That's what we discussed. We don't have a size of the, what I'm saying is when we do this, maybe we should have a minimum of 8.
That's how we got there.
And that might be how we got there.
That's how we got there. I'm coming back a little bit.
I think the other discussion was regarding the ability to hold quorum, that were some meetings that were not, they were not, because of the size of the group, the quorum quotient was too high, so it became a struggle.
I've always been a believer in a small committee moves quicker and is able to get things accomplished quicker. I can go either way on that. I mean, we could go with a 7-member committee and Gordon could be staff support. He's still going to have his fingerprints all over everything that happens.
I mean, I think the idea though is that having members, a representation from other boards will not only increase communication, but also efficiencies.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, and then I also think on the flip side of that, having it too heavily weighted towards just municipal participation doesn't take into account the greater community's input. So, I mean, to kind of go to your point earlier, when you're talking about what's the municipal role in this whole thing, obviously on this type of makeup of a board, it's significant. And so I don't know if that's, on an advisory basis or just as an attempt to kind of make sure that everybody's kind of looking at this with the same lens and reporting back to the respective boards. But, that's something to consider as well.
I don't necessarily believe that if they're answering to the select board, a select board member has to be on that board. Is that what you just said?
No.
You just said the opposite?
That is.
Is that what you just said? The opposite?
I think Jonathan, this is something he's gonna want to be on.
No, but I think,
That's a little bit.
Just being a.
I get that, but I also think that we're gonna be ultimately responsible for some of their initiatives.
Well, that is the role of this committee. I think Heidi put it correctly in that it is there to bring the elements of the planning commission, the select board and the DRB together. One, to see it all through the same lens, find ways for efficiencies, have those effective communications between the different boards. And, we may not realize that based on the silos that we operate in between the select board, the planning commission and DRB to some extent that, stuff is lost in translation or whatever. So that we can find effective ways to move together as an entire municipality, whether it's just a change here or a change there, but it may affect everyone collectively. I think that ultimately the goal of this committee is to make recommendations and that the select board effectively is the final say. I do see places where a policy where, let's say that it has something to do with zoning, that obviously the role would be to take that presentation and bring it to the planning commission, which would then come to the select board. But ultimately, that's the crux of it.
Zoning changes can be initiated at the select board level.
True.
The select board can make recommendations to the planning commission. And I think the way that this committee is proposed to be structured gives the opportunity for the select board to be involved through reporting in a way that we could say to the planning commission, we support this. The way that the way that the committee was constructed before, working for the planning commission, it lost that connection. It was a disconnect from the legislative board, this board, the policy setting board, in our ability to be part of the conversation. And in speaking with the past chairman of the planning commission, when in my barn, actually. I expressed that concern and said that official committees of the town need to be created by the select board. We've had a discussion before. It can't be created. Non-elected officials don't have the authority to create official committees for the town. Only select board has that capacity. So since this was created by the planning commission, it could only be an ad hoc advisory committee, but really had no authority. And this way with the way it's proposing set up under the auspices of the select board makes it work. And Victoria's still got her hand up. Victoria, did you have something you wanted to add to this?
To Mr. Nichols, I was on the housing task force and I did have to apply. I was not appointed. I am not speaking for the rest of the previous housing task force members, but I feel 2 points would be valid to be brought into your conversation. One, it would be of tremendous help if future applicants, even representatives of the 3 town boards, knew some outline of what the mission or intention of the committee would be. Not etched in stone, but speaking from experience, the 3 years I served on the task force, there was a big discrepancy of what I thought I was getting into and what actually was the outcome. So I just recommend that it would be helpful possibly to future applicants that they had a vague idea of what the intention of the committee was beyond, oh, you're going to be on a housing committee. And secondly, I would strongly recommend, and this is from a more recent experience, that the application on the town's website, if that's the application that's going to be used for members to apply and serve on the housing task force, is updated beyond name, address, and contact information. It might speed up the process if there were some questions as to why the applicant wants to serve, what qualifications the applicant brings, things like that. Just speaking from experience.
2 very good points.
Yeah, I think those are great comments, and we at this level we received a couple of reports in person from the housing task force, and they were very interesting. But having not been a part of the process, it just seemed like there was no connection. There just wasn't a lot going on, and I don't want that to happen again. I want this to be effective and lean and able to work toward something. I think the housing task force was very productive within own element and came up with some ideas, but nobody knew what to do with those ideas, and they didn't know if they were heading in the right direction. I'm kind of agreeing with you, Victoria, that there wasn't an expectation from the outset as to where you should be headed, and therefore you could wind up spending a lot of time on something to find out you had been going maybe in a direction that not everyone else could embrace. So we don't want that to happen. Sylvia, I'm going to let you speak from the chair because I know you have difficulty.
Yeah, unless somebody's going to almost hurt me. I'm sorry, that's my age now. I can't do things the way I used to. I hope this doesn't come up again. Anyway, my mind is really going. In reference to this topic that we're on, I really think on any kind of committee of housing and rentals, you should have a landlord or two on the committee, so you know what elements are necessary for success. And you know, we've got big problems in this, bigger than I think most of us ever realize, or even now realize, with drugs. We have a lot of people that there's magic in this world that are looking for houses. There is no magic. They can't go outside and pick the leaves off the trees and think that that is going to be a payment for their rent. We've got problems. And you need to have some landlords on that committee so you can hear their struggles. Everybody doesn't rent to people who have money. And the element that you're looking for to help, it's not always that desirable. I mean, I'm not saying anymore, that's not, but there are problems out there. I constantly think that we have a clean town, but you know, I'm a realist in some respects. I think the best of people, but you can't tell a book by its cover.
So
There are problems out there.
I just,
Greg maybe know more about it, because he's in that kind of business.
yeah, no, that you're making a good point, but in terms of the size of the committee, smaller, maybe nimbler, 7 was, are we back into that realm, and we have to indicate that at this point, or do we?
Well, I think we should come up with a minimum number.
I mean, I think we
And what
agree
what the
minimum.
makeup should be, and there's certainly opportunities to expand or add.
If
to
necessary.
it. If that expertise exists, then, you know.
So 3,
I think there needs to be representation on the committee of people, the development world, that are,
Research, there's such a word, research.
well,
Just don't have a committee of people that have ideas in their head. Research what you're doing.
what we're talking about right now is establishing who's going to be on the committee that's from the municipal government. And a minimum number of people on the committee from outside of municipal government, and then going through the application process to get people on the committee. So, I think we are right now is that we're going to have 3 people from municipal government from each of the major boards. We're going to have a town staff person who's very knowledgeable on this particular subject. And then a minimum of 4 from outside of municipal government. And it could be landlords, it could be people from nonprofits, it could be, we have a talent in this community.
I think if you
people are willing to
solicit
serve.
people with a broad, like with broad interests and background, you'll probably get people that are just not focused on one aspect. So hopefully we get, interest.
When I did speak to Gordon about his interest in being part of this potential committee, he was not, I want to say ambivalent. It didn't matter whether he was a voting member. He felt like he could contribute in both ways. I think if we did make it an even number, obviously that does, a legislative body, so, ties are less important, but
They don't vote on, what would they vote? I mean, why make the guy do the work and not give him a voice?
Well, he would have, I think he'd have a voice. He wouldn't have voted. But
He could go either way.
he could, is he the steering factor or just, because if he's not, then he probably should be voting.
What is his title? The development director or is he our assessor? He's a
He
development
is-
director, then.
He does have an economic development element to
He
his.
should be a voting member. That's just my.
Not necessarily. I mean, the zoning administrator is not a voting member of the DRB. It's a staff support. The town planner is not a voting member of the planning commission. It's staff support, bring expertise and knowledge and do a lot of the legwork. So this could be the same sort of relationship. Ideas. Let's put something out there.
Well, if he's staff support, and then you've got 3 municipal, you're left with 4 to begin with. From outside, I think that's a good start.
Brian has something to say.
And
it gives a majority to the community.
then if necessarily, it can be increased or decreased.
Brian has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you guys are doing a great job. But if you're gonna go about this, you may as well go all the way from the beginning. With everything the state is doing right now in terms of potential housing development and changes to Act 250, having somebody from BCRC serve as one of your independent moderators so that you're getting the most up-to-date and allowable information would definitely help yours and maybe Gordon's efforts if he's going to be the staff liaison. Also considering shared municipal resources with your partners to the south, being the village, considering having somebody from one of those committees, since they'll ultimately be having the exact same conversations of their own while sharing the same infrastructure. If you put everybody together, there will be no duplication of efforts, and you will have amplified resources at your disposal. It will also give you the greatest landscape of what your housing stock currently looks like against your municipal infrastructure. If you limit it just to the town or center, you will not be looking at the big picture of available resources. So in order for you to paint the largest picture, you have to just start with everybody. You can find out that there are redundancies along the way, but if you don't open yourselves up to every one of the stakeholders from the beginning, I would be concerned that you are going to drag this process out without major action being applicable down the road. So I don't know why BCRC wouldn't be one of those resources that you brought from the onset.
So in your assessment, I would like to have people from Manchester making decisions on Manchester. And I agree, having someone from the village would be a help. But as far as BCRC, I certainly see using BCRC as a resource. I'm not sure if they need to be
He's
representative
an
on.
advisor, I think, or I think that the grant opportunity part is critical, obviously, the
Yeah.
understanding.
But those folks and groups, yeah.
And also understanding the landscape on the state side and the federal side. That's going to be where you get the funding for anything that happens. So it's
That's
just,
correct. And they can write the grants for you.
right.
And I do think that there, at least in the original proposal, which I'm not stating now is the current proposal, but let's just say that there is I think an important advisory group that is, not established by us or anything like that. But I think that there are certainly previous members, let's say, of housing groups from Bennington County that don't want to still commit to a new committee, but would still want to be involved. And I think if they could build a big enough network of folks like people on the grant side for BCRC, or through other nonprofits or agencies or whatever it is that they can cast a wide enough net, but not necessarily be a voting member. I think one of the things that we've discussed, and actually the joke was that in the very first meeting, we kind of quipped that John Burnham is not a Manchester resident, but he does have extensive interest in Manchester's success. And that's when you corrected me that you do not have to be a Manchester resident to serve on a board or committee or commission. I think you need to have a vested interest in the town.
So we're pushing up against a time issue, and I guess I think how I'm looking at it now is that I feel comfortable saying that I'd be supportive of soliciting interest for participation in this group. But I don't really, when we talk about the proposal, I'm not there yet. It's a proposal. I'm not there with.
Oh, I just think that I think that we should agree to form the committee and set a minimum parameter of the makeup. And then we can start soliciting.
But my concerns are with that are what Victoria brought up, about, again, if, is it too general the way that we have it? And should we have more specificity around what we think, the kind of guardrails are for this committee? Or do you think that that's
the chicken and egg thing that I was.
So, I mean, I honestly, and this was too short to get it out to you guys. I mean, I put together a draft of like here are the five items that are the basic guardrails. They're not as intensive as saying you need to go out and do, land-based assessments that are doing blah, 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 blah. It's literally like,
well, can you send that to us?
Sure.
We can talk about it
Yeah.
the next time?
yeah, I mean,
We're about a minute away from our expiration here. Probably unlike milk, we don't necessarily go sour. We got town manager updates. Do we have a need for an executive session?
It's up to you. We do have, the Depot Street.
I think we should bring everybody up to speed.
Okay, then, yeah, for contracts, real estate negotiations.
Do we have a need for an executive session under personnel?
No.
No, okay. So, we're gonna have to extend the meeting.
I'll make a
Sorry,
motion
Jan.
to extend the meeting.
Doesn't have to be unanimous.
We usually go till we don't go past
The
11.
motion is to extend it for an hour, but we're not gonna take an hour.
We're not gonna-
I have a motion. What, is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any the Okay, the meeting is extended.
Yesterday.
Let's wrap up this housing committee agenda item. Let's take an action to create a housing committee.
Okay, and I think that's the extent of it. I don't think we have to put parameters on it. I don't think we've had time to look at the parameters that Jonathan suggested. I don't think we've had time to discuss it adequately. If we agree to it and we solicit input, I think that's a great first step. And unless we want to be here, all night, which, okay.
Should we,
No.
Want to say,
should we solicit applications for membership?
I think so.
I think so.
I think that would get us moving in the right direction.
from the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that, again, I think that you should cast a wider net than what Victoria said about name and address. Let's see some qualifications and some, some reasoning for wanting to join so that we can have a diverse group of people to select from their expertise.
and that process is done through the town, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Can be, yeah, sure,
right. Just like we do for committees.
sure.
And
So
then
this is your motion.
when we don't necessarily, Heidi and I don't have to be the.
No.
And
No, not that. Yeah.
Well, and I had already talked that I wanted to, really work with you on creating the process of how this was all going to go so that it was as smooth as possible. I just want to say this before I do make a motion. I do believe, and I don't want to be here for an hour to discuss this, but I do believe that this is a beyond housing thing, because I do believe housing is very important. But because, as you were talking about the grants, there is a flavor of economic development that is in this as well. And I believe that I would entertain, and my original proposal was to make this the Housing and Community Development Committee. And that's what I would like it to be called, based on its economic it's gonna extend itself beyond at some point, hopefully that we are able to solve. I'm not saying we're going to solve it overnight, but there is a community development aspect to this. There is a economic development aspect to this, and there are many committees.
I think that the economic development portion of it needs to be limited to housing.
Sure, that is in effect.
Otherwise it becomes way too broad in scope and it loses its focus. So
I think you're making a mistake with that. I think that this should be limited to housing. I think, and I agree that there's gonna be side things that happen as a result of this, but the more that you open this up to focusing on all the various issues in the community around, housing, I think that you're gonna lose the whole kind of laser vision focus that this needs to have. It's just gonna, it's gonna be mission drift, and that's gonna be a challenge. That's my opinion. And I also just think the broader it is, the less likely you are to have
Ivan, I'd like to hear what you think.
Just a second. I was just asked a question and I want to respond to it. I agree with Heidi on this. I think that we need to keep it focused. It's got to have an economic development component to it, no matter what. But it needs to be, as Heidi said, laser focused on housing and the economic development. I mean, it's a social issue. There's so much. If we put all that into the name of the committee, it becomes too broad in its focus.
I wasn't saying economic development in the part of it, it was community development. Because, looking at, let's say, Hillvale, right? And the changes that community, that neighborhood within our community has changed based on aspects of our housing stock, how things are happening. Is that part of this structure? I understand what you're saying, that yes, it all comes back to housing. I think there's also it's more about just building housing. It is developing community from it.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say this very briefly. Green Mountain Estates was affordable housing. When Dick Hayes put that together, he sold those lots very cheaply. The houses were built cheaply. It served a need for working people in the town of Manchester. But unfortunately, as properties got redeveloped and changed hands, they suddenly became out of reach of working people. And those are the kind of things, this committee's going to be focused on those kind of things anyways. And that's all community development, and the same thing with Hillvale and everything else. I mean, one of the components that they're going to be looking at is how do you create affordable housing and keep it affordable?
Sure.
So, those kind of things are all part of the discussion.
So then if it's just housing committee, it's basic and bland, or it's basic and generic enough to encompass and give laser focus on these things, but it doesn't also have an action to it. Not that select board does, but the planning commission, the design review board, this is housing committee.
then call it a task force. I mean,
2.0.
Yeah, the housing task force.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it.
I think the housing task force is a great moniker.
That's a great moniker.
It's just
get really cool
reorganized. And the positive byproduct will be everything I think Jonathan is seeking. So I move that we call it the Housing Task Force and that it's comprised initially of 7 members.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion of the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we just created a committee and it's going to have 7 members.
Let's create a task force.
Okay, it's a committee. It's a task force. That's fine.
We'll say the task force is a committee in the first sentence.
It should say 2.0.
An idea while you guys are talking about things. This property right across the street that just been sort of developed, semi-developed.
Jacket, back your jacket.
Are taking care of all the road work. But they've got that leveled off very nicely, and all that kind of thing. I don't know who owns that property. Is Bill Dronsick?
I believe it's.
You know, somehow housing development there would be adequate because it's near where people can walk.
These are the kind of things that this committee is gonna.
All the open meetings that they have, you can bring up all these excellent points.
Yeah, the task force.
Yeah, that's a bit too specific
What's
for,
gonna happen there, but.
that's a bit too specific for what we're discussing here this evening. We want to keep it moving along, but those are the kind of ideas that are going to be explored. There are all sorts of properties like that throughout town, and a lot of them have been identified.
Some of them are not close enough to be accommodating to other.
Okay, so
sources.
those are points to be brought up at a later time, not later this evening, but when this committee's put together. Is there anything else that we do with this here this evening?
No, I'll meet with, I mean, if you'd like me to, I'll meet with Scott and start putting together the outreach. Getting solicitations for community members.
I would appreciate you doing that on behalf of the board.
Thank you.
Good. I'm glad you said that.
So, okay, we have a committee. It's going to be 7 members,
Task force.
a task force.
Number 11, I think.
Scott, town manager updates.
It's just a reminder for you and the public about the energy fair the Energy Committee is putting on here on June 15th, 11 to 3, right here at this location. And you're all invited. Second thing is we have to set a date for a post-termination hearing. We had to terminate an employee, and part of the appeal process now is that the select board is the hearing review of the termination, and this appeal seems to be, it's going to take into our attorney assigned by the LCT about 4 hours. Could last up to 4 hours.
So daytime or nighttime?
It's up to you.
What's the time?
It will be a
public hearing.
It's open. They want,
meeting.
they could have an open or closed, and they want it.
Scott will not be leading us through this process because he obviously is the one who took the action to terminate the employees, and that's what's being appealed. So we're going to have to work with the attorney that's working for us from VLCT.
And Merrill is also helping.
And Merrill is also apprised, and she'll be part of this. So I'm going to need a lot of guidance to get us through this process. I've never been through it.
No, it'll be interesting in a certain way.
4 hours of interesting.
Regardless of that, the league's attorney, Bernie Lambeck, said he will assist you in preparing for the.
Yeah, what we need to do is prepare for it, and we also need to have findings and make a decision based on those findings, and it's all very legal. And it has to be based on testimony that we received during the course of the hearing. So, I assume, Scott, that you'll be a witness, and so I'm not talking with Scott about this really at all.
Okay.
And by necessity, he needs to be outside of the process.
So how long do we have to schedule it? Like, when is it?
It'd be a 1 day.
No. Like
far out?
Within
60
X amount
days.
of. There's no time.
There's no time frame for scheduling it, but once we've had the hearing, it's a very short term, 30 days?
14.
14 days, I'm sorry.
So when do you suggest? Like, what kind of time frame are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at possible dates, and we've got next Tuesday, we have the cell tower meeting. Following Tuesday, a regular select board meeting. 6:25 seems to be open. So those are just dates that I floated right off the bat.
If it doesn't,
Longer than a year, you said?
I'm looking at it right
Do
now.
they have to approve of the date that we set, or is it just we?
No, we said it,
You start before.
they come. So 6:25, yeah, I will still be here.
I was haying today, I wouldn't have been here tonight. I don't get, if this is what time I get done.
I mean,
Is that the hearing and is it open?
It's an open meeting.
Does it help if you do it in the afternoon and not the evening? Like, could you do it at 1? No,
I can only do evenings.
and you can only be starting at 7.
And the time slot would be,
it's up to them.
No, I can try to get people in to
Help,
do what I do and. I'll
6?
be doing it after I'm gone.
Like, could you do it at 6?
I could do it at 6.
Can we do it 6 on the 25th?
6 p.m.
At least we're only going till 10 if it really goes.
I think I'm
I don't think
leaving,
it's gonna go 4 hours. I think that's
I think I'm leaving the next morning at like 6 in the morning, but that's fine.
Put you right,
there you go.
Well, I have motivation to limit the cross examination. We're shooting for the 25th at 6. And then if something comes up, you'll let us know.
Yep. Okay,
otherwise we're starting to get into like July and August and that gets really busy.
Yeah, you better get this done now because that's very true. July is bad, August is bad.
in my final manager update, we have some flags, as you know, at the rec park. And after last select board meeting, when you decided just to have this American flag and the state flag up, Jonathan brought it to my attention that we have a couple other flags over there at the rec park. One is the Manchester Rec Park flag, which designates that's the place you're at, and the Applejack Stadium was the other one. And then there's a third one, Fusion, the Fusion soccer program and the youth program. So in my mind, those are not promotional flags, except for the possibility of the Fusion argument, that they were just directional flags saying, like a sign, you're here at Applejack Stadium or you're here at Manchester Rec Park. So I just was looking for some guidance and feedback on that policy decision that you made regarding that and compared to the flags.
You know, I think I was the one who recommended we go with the American flag and the state flag on municipal property. But those flags, I walk every day. I saw the flags aren't in the category I was thinking of. They are a location flag, like this is Applejack Stadium. It's not a group of people. I don't know that that's what I was referring to.
No, I think you actually did. You specifically said there are a few flags over there. It's like one of them that I remember you saying Applejack Stadium in particular. And I think between I mean, it was at that point, it was the three of us. We said, if I remember right, you said it's cleaner if we just say no flags other than the United States flag and the Vermont flag. And I think that's.
Yeah, I mean, I probably may have said it in the course of the discussion, but having looked at it, I just don't know that feels like the same situation that we're discussing, because but.
Do you want them down? Do you want those flags down?
Well, I think based on what I believe we agreed on, in an effort to say, we're going to take everything down but the United States flag and the Vermont state flag until we've put in I remember this because I used the word proper and Mr. Norath corrected me, flag policy that reflects the policy of the town of Manchester for flags on property, that the letter of the law is that they should come down, which gives us more of a reason to move forward and plan a potential policy.
Well, the issue is that we had the discussion based on the threat of legal action. There is probably no threat of legal action if we fly a flag that says Applejack Stadium.
Is it necessary?
To fly it?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it may not be necessary to fly it. I think
Nothing's necessary.
They have a sign as you enter.
it says Applejack. You just, yeah, I mean,
And then don't they have it on the barn building, Applejack Field? Or Applejack?
It's there somewhere, I think.
I think it was also, they were put there as a complement to the events that were going on before.
I
So
think,
I don't have a problem with taking them
I think,
down.
I agree with Jonathan's assessment and recollection at the time. I think, we said, look,
So, yeah,
United States flag, state flag, everything else comes down. I think you're right.
And just so that everyone's aware, I worked on finding supplemental policies from the state of Vermont and other places that have been developed since that Supreme Court case and put together a potential for everyone to review prior to the next meeting, because I asked him to put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Putting this in context with what happened in Boston, which was really the Shurtleff versus Boston case was the one that precipitated all the recommendations to begin with. There was one flag that was used as a place to express
One flag.
whatever it was
Yes.
going to be. And there were, as I remember it, 256 different flags that were flown there over a period of time. And it was decided that it was a forum instead of a First Amendment right. And therefore, anybody could fly a flag on it. Since then, the city of Boston has put a flag policy in effect. And it still speaks to that one flagpole as being the place where the city will approve flags that are flown there, and they've run it by their team of attorneys. And Jonathan has gone a step further, and he's looked at other towns in Vermont that have and has massaged it to make sure that's in compliance with Vermont state law and all that. But the one piece where I'm a little concerned is your proposed language not only mentions the flags at Applejack or at the rec park, but also town hall, the town parks, and up and down the highways.
We should be talking about this under that as an agenda item, not as
That's-
a manager's.
Well, yeah, but it came up, and so I think there's going to be discussion.
Sure. This is a start.
But what came up was a question by the town manager, what does he do with all those flags? And because there's still so much up in the air as to what we're actually going to do with this, I think they come down.
That's fine.
yeah, that's fine. Fly the American flag there.
In the state flag.
Yeah, the Vermont
Yeah.
flag.
Well,
I think there's five flagpoles.
There's 5 flag, well, and the highest one is the American flag in the center, so.
Which is the law.
That can stay and the others can come down.
Yep.
That's all I have, thank you.
Is that it?
Are we doing it?
We have,
Up to you. It would be a real estate contract.
I just have one thing. I know I'm not going to take more than 2 seconds on this. I just wanted to say, as we move into other business, I wanted to thank Ivan. I know Heidi, you weren't here for this marathon discussion, but Greg and Ivan, the response that I've received from members of the community, especially youth that were witness there as part of what happened last Tuesday night or the last meeting, was incredibly powerful to a lot of folks. And you know, whether they didn't agree with everything we said or, you know, as parts of it, it was a great discussion, and I appreciate that. And as a token, as part of, you know, not getting everything that I hoped for coming into it, was that my husband Thomas and I made an order for 200 pride flags, 3x5s that are going to be available this weekend to start picking up at the Manchester Visitor Center. As a kind of a thank you for the select board seeing the need and the willing to have the conversation.
great, thank you. Other business, any other business? Our next meeting is June 11th.
Joint.
Clock at the Manchester Community Library. It's with the Planning Commission for the Verizon Telecommunications Facility application at Hunter Park.
And Mr. Chairman, I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate issues that I forgot my language.
Premature
Premature disclosure
of
which
which
could put the town at a distinct disadvantage.
Thank you.
I say disadvantage.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Scott,
Yes.
do you anticipate any action after this executive session?
I do not.
So that will end the public portion of the select board meeting. The only action we will take after coming out of executive session is to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for attendance.
Don't forget to sign in on the way out.